What is it like to drive a dream? Well, I'm experiencing that right now. Those of you who know me, those of you getting to know me, know that I am obsessed by automotive design. I think that ultimately we're attracted to all cars for an emotional reason first and foremost, and then the specs and all of that come next. But design is really the thing that draws us in or pushes us away. And when it comes to design, I am absolutely enraptured by concept cars. Those examples of forms where a stylist, a designer gets to fulfill his or her ideals about what they want a car to be, what they want it to look like, the shape, the form. And it's very rare, of course, that we get a chance to drive a concept car, a dream car. And I've often spoken of the sort of the slip from cup to lip when it comes to concept cars being productionized. And the car I'm driving today is one in which there was absolutely no translation. And translation is actually interesting too as we get into the story of this Toyota Sera. Now, being the Italophile that I am, of course, I see S-E-R-A and I immediately think of the Italian word sera, evening. But in actuality, the name derives from the French. It's sera, the future of être, to be. And that also, I think, speaks a lot about what this car was designed to be and what it was for a very brief moment in the Japanese domestic market only arena. This is a car with fairly prosaic underpinnings. The 1.5 liter, 108 horsepower, 104 horsepower engine, front wheel drive platform, shared with the least expensive Toyota models. But the transformation that's rendered by this design primarily, which is the work of my great friend Stuart Reed. A little later in this video, we're going to chat with Stuart to talk about the design influences that created this car and some of the influences which this car had on some others, including a very, very, very famous design, one of the leading designs of the 20th century indeed. But back to this Toyota Sera. This is a dream car for the road. It's got this wonderful greenhouse, which is all glass. It's absolutely spectacular. And these marvelous up-hinged doors, more on those in a bit. And just the incredible feeling of air and lightness. I do feel like I'm driving a car just off the stand of the Geneva show or the Frankfurt Auto Show or the Detroit International Show, and just driving it on the public roads. And it's a wonderful feeling. One of the other things is that I love small cars. And I think that, designing any car is a challenge. But I think that arguably, and my designer friends I think would agree with me, that designing a big car, a luxury car, or a racing car, a sports car, is probably an easier brief than designing an economical small car. First of all, the compass of the size of this car, just to make the lines work in a very short space is, I think, something that takes a great deal of talent and ability, and Stuart has those in spades. And the other thing is that it's all about the way all the details come together, including color. One of the things that was remarkable about the Toyota Sera was that it was available in a range of very unusual colors. A bright green, some other wonderful colors. This car is painted a beautiful, almost iridescent silver that has a lot of yellow in it, makes it very warm feeling, and again, brings us back to that whole show car ethic. And what's also wonderful about this car is its lightness. It's funny, before I get to the lightness of this car, we think about the multiple sales channels that some manufacturers have, Honda and Acura and Nissan and Infiniti and Mercedes and AMG or Maybach. And the Japanese market, which is very small, they took this division to a level that we could never imagine, where specific brand stores sold a specific line of cars. So in certain Honda stores, you found certain Honda cars. Other models, you had to go to a different store. And Toyota, of course, followed suit. And this car, the Sera, was sold in the Toyota Corolla stores. There was another sales outlet called the Toyota Vista store, and their sporty model was the MR2. Now, of course, we got the MR2 in the US, a great little mid-engined two-seater sports car, but we did not get the Sera. And I think more is the shame for it, because I think this is a really brilliant car, very different from the MR2. Now, the MR2 was designed to be a small sports car, 2.2 liter engine, and all that comes with the mid-engine format. This is, as I said before, a front-wheel drive 1.5 liter car with 104 horsepower, but only weighs 2,000 pounds. The MR2 is actually 700 pounds heavier than this car. Granted, the MR2 has a lot more power, but the balance, the proportion of weight to power in this car is absolutely amazing and really rewards you in a way that is very surprising. This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a sports car. It is, yes, a sporty car. And just puts a grin on your face as you drive it. The engine is responsive, and although it makes a great deal of noise, slightly agricultural, around 3,500 or so, once you get above 4,000 RPM up to 5, it really does take on a snarl. It's very, very, very handy, and it is a car that you just want to just wring the neck of like a little puppy. It is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. The idea that this is also a 2+2 is pretty funny, but nonetheless, again, in the marketplace, it does divide it from the MR2, the two-seater sports car, and that makes a lot of sense. Driving a right-hand drive car in a left-hand drive environment is also not as big a challenge as most people think. You get used to it fairly quickly. You have to pay attention. This car's got great mirrors, so you know what's happening on the left-hand side of the car in case you have to change lanes or anything like that. But also, I think the very airiness of this car makes it much easier to drive in its right-hand drive form, which is the only form in which it was made, here in America or any other left-hand drive market you might find. And, it really teaches us a lot, teaches me a lot, about the allure of the JDM product, Japanese domestic market product. Some of it is just that forbidden fruit, but the other is the fact that you are transported to a different place. This is a car built for a time and a place, and it really is wonderful to think about that, because this is built in a time when there weren't quite so many restrictions, and certainly not the restrictions that we had in America. There were different restrictions in Japan, for sure, and some of them quite onerous. But to have this car here is just to have such a treat, because we don't often get to sample cars like this in the US market, because we didn't have them when they were new. And now that you can import these cars, since they're more than 25 years old, I think that it would be a wonderful addition to any collector's stable, especially one who is enamored of Japanese cars. But you don't have to be a Japanese car nut to be in love with this Sera. Design, fun, rarity. They only built 16,000 of these over the production run, and the looks that this gives you, the smiles that you get, the thumbs up, it's just absolutely fantastic driving this car. And again, as somebody who owns a 1935 Fiat Balilla and a 1987 Fiat Panda, small cars are the answer. I just love them, absolutely love them, and I want to convert everybody to my small car world. Welcome to the Toyota Sera. And so we are now here with my friend Stuart Reed for me, a legendary designer, somebody who, a lot of people don't know a lot about the design business, and they presume that these cars sort of draw themselves somehow. It is something that is not the case, and also, quite interestingly, you have had one of those fascinating careers where you have been your own man. You have worked basically most of your career as a freelancer, a good part of your career as an educator while still working. So your influence has been felt widely around the world, and in a way that I think that a lot of designers who may have gone to work for a single company out of school and retired from that company 30 years later haven't done. And of course, we're here talking about the Toyota Sera, and I have to correctly, I'm such an Italophile, so to me it's always the Sera, even though it should be the Sera, since it is the future form of the verb être in French. But nonetheless, we're going to call it the Sera because that's what I've been calling it in this entire video, so hopefully you're happy with that. You and I know I've had the conversation, which I've had with many of my designer friends, about what I call the slip from cup to lip. When a brilliant concept car enters production, you think, oh, that's not what I saw. And the Sera is such an amazing car because it is your concept brought to production. How did that happen, Stuart?
Well, I joined the Toyota Calty studio in Newport Beach, the advanced studio, in 1980. And I can recall there was one really interesting product brief, a very different sort of a vehicle that I did. And the following year, Toyota wanted to do a very different project. And so I got the brief for this thing based on the humble little Starlet Tercel mechanicals, but they wanted a very expressive, innovative little sport coupe. And so, what a fun project. I mean, I like small cars. I think you do too, Donald. We've talked a lot about that. But and so it happened rather quickly, getting the basic silhouette worked out and looking for something very new and expressive, like this real glassy cabin and some unique doors. And people love unique doors. That's where the human goes into the car. And so if you can do something expressive and different there, and that's, of course, what I did. And so I did it over 2 different years. We would usually take our concept models to Japan in the fall of the year. And the first year I took one that was more of a mock-up, not a finally finished painted car, but it had all the ideas. It was mocked up with the unique door system and so on. And it was like a green light, go ahead, let's develop it next year, which we did. And I took it to Japan, and I actually electrified the model so that it had a electric golf cart drivetrain in it, so you could actually drive it around the Toyota Styling Dome in Toyota City. And I took E.G. Toyota for a ride in it. We had kept a path, around our other projects, and so he was able to get in it, open the door, and he was chuckling, and he thought that was great. So it really green-lighted the program,
Not only a great designer, but a terrific salesman as well. Well done, Stuart. Well done.
Well, it was great. What we would usually do is give, upwards of a dozen presentations of all of our projects from Calty. And by the final week, it would be, everything would like rehearsals leading up to it. Then we'd have E.G. Toyota and the board of directors, all the blue suits come in. But we had pretty well choreographed it by that point, and we were able to. And so we had done some video of this, electrified concept model at Toyota Calty studio in Newport Beach. And so all the models that they were accustomed to from us were static, full-scale models, of course. And so the final thing was they were sitting in a little sort of a theater we had created and looking at the model, and then suddenly they see it driving. And we're just watching their heads, and they're looking at the screen, they're looking at the model, they're looking at the screen, they're looking at the model. It's like, is this a real car?
How do they bypass 2 years of development there? That was absolutely amazing. Those designers can do anything. And let's talk about the fact that you mentioned the brief being for an expressive sports car. And to me, one of the things that whenever anybody sees the Sera on the road, they think, wow, that's amazing. Is that a Toyota? It can't be. And why didn't they bring it to the U.S.? And, you know, as much fun as we had with the MR2 here, what do you think that product would have been like if it had been sold in the U.S.?
Well, I mean, I think there was an appetite for it. I think that exceeded what they were actually intended to produce volume-wise. But I've learned, you know, I learned in the years following that there was a much deeper message in the creation of that car, because what they actually had going on, which is absolutely fascinating to me, and this is a picture of Toyota's genius, in my opinion. It wasn't just about the car. It was about looking for a fairly low-volume car that could utilize a new production stamping technology that they were developing. And I know now, looking back, that it was because they were really thinking about the long-term implication of storing massive amounts of dies and tools to stamp sheet metal. And they're big, bulky dies. And so just if you imagine a car maker having to keep inventory of replacement panels for 10 years and do the math, the number of makes and models that Toyota has, it's astonishing. Which is why, you know, we know some car makers will offload their old Fiat tooling to a Russian car company or something like that. So there's a place that those replacement panels are made. But they were working on a new process that involves some hydraulics, some things, and very compact tooling. And so they wanted to do a low-volume car program around that. And so in a way, you know, they made, what was it, I think, 5,000 a year or something like that, I think.
Exactly.
And yeah, and so it's enough to really test out a process, but you're not risking, you know, a 400,000 unit a year program or something like that. So that's why it was just for the Japan market. They made it in a smaller kind of a craft facility near Tokyo, but it was a really, really neat experiment. And I don't know much about if they've continued to use that process, but it's an intriguing way to make, you know, metal panels.
Fascinating. And the other thing which is, I think, so interesting about the Sera and the experience of of driving it is the fact that you, again, unlike many other designers, have spent a lot of your career doing interiors. Mm-hmm. And so there is a unity in the Sera that I think you don't find in a lot of other cars. You don't step through the door and think, oh, I've gone into another time zone or something. And the interior is as interesting and, dare I say, futuristic as the exterior. You know, you really do feel like you're driving a concept car. And it's an amazing feeling to have. And obviously you said the process is very quick. So was there any redirection, or I won't say objection, but any redirection or instruction from Toyota management after you presented the concept and the model?
Well, really, no, because you know what we did over the years at Calty, and by the way, you know, the Toyota Calty studio just celebrated 2 weeks ago its 50th anniversary.
Wow!
Yeah, it's amazing. It was the first sort of modern, advanced car design studio for a global automaker in Southern California. You know, in the early 70s. And so we always just did concepts and sent them to Japan, rarely for a production car up until recently. Now, of course, Calty does a lot of production cars for the U.S. market. But the project after I did the concept, the 2 years of the concept, moved on to a production design team in Japan. So, for example, the interior, which is, you're right, it's beautifully integrated. I can't take credit for that production interior. The team in Japan... And I'm sorry, Donald, the name of the lead designer escapes me. I have a little print piece somewhere in my library, but they did a brilliant job of taking that car and then actually in many ways improving it over the concept that I brought from Calty. Just first-rate work, you know, productionizing that little car.
And that's that thing, that slip from cup to lip that you don't feel at all with this car. And obviously they felt your concept and what it meant very strongly, so they were able to execute an interior that really suited it well.
That's exactly right. And I think it was one of those projects that got green-lighted quickly. For one thing, it wasn't as high a risk program as many of the big programs that are super high volume and made in multiple plants around the world, for example. This was a little craft-built car, $5,000 a year, which for them is low volume production,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think it was sort of easily, when E.G. Toyota rode in it and liked it and was impressed by the door system, it's like, let's just make that car.
And it's, of course, it's fairly well known and not well known at all about the fact that the doors, specifically, Gordon Murray was so incredibly impressed by the doors. He insisted that the same type of door system be used on the McLaren F1, one of the greatest cars of all time.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure to always, the next time I see our friend Peter Stevens, I'll say, Peter, I love your design for the F1, but of course, it's really Stuart Reed's doors that make the car happen.
Well,
what's
interesting is do you have their book, Driving Ambition, about the McLaren F? Beautiful book, and they're great. I mean, they have a little picture of the Toyota Sera in there, and they give credit to it. And there's a picture of Peter and Gordon building their mock-up, around the concept. So,
well, it's again a testament to two things. One is the fact that great designers do not hesitate to take the lead from other inspiring designs, and the fact that something you said at the beginning of our chat, which I really do strongly believe in. You and I love small cars, and I said in an earlier part of this video that it is so incredibly difficult to design a good small car. It's easy to design a big car, it's easy to design a racing car, but to design a practical, usable, for all intents and purposes, style aside, the Sera is a utility car. Mm-hmm. And so to do that, I think is absolutely brilliant. It also is a car which I think defies scale. If you see a photograph of a Sera and there's not a human standing by it, you have no idea how big the car is.
That's a great comment.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, the Lotus Elite is that way, isn't it?
Exactly.
You can't tell.
And it's something that I know in your great portfolio of designs, which is incredibly varied as well, which I think is also the mark of a terrific and creative and imaginative designer, the fact that you've designed everything from truck utilities to off-road vehicles to lunar vehicles for Lockheed Martin.
And the 39 Bugatti.
and a 39 Bugatti. Exactly. There are very few that can claim that range. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that is so great about the Sera that I appreciate, and I think people that see the car appreciate, is the fact that you really did something appropriate for what the product is. It's not something pretending to be something else. It is something that is very proudly what it is. And the only cavil I might say that some people say, wow, they get into this thing, it's so incredibly beautiful, it should be really, really, really fast. No, it has to be quick and fun. It doesn't have to be fast.
That's right. Yeah, the total character, and that's why I wish in some ways that car would have been exported, and a left-hand drive version for other markets. But the one that my wife and I imported from Japan about 8 years ago, I think, is a silver blue car, which is the color that my concept was that I took to Japan, and it's just a ball to drive. I mean, you know that you've driven. Oh,
indeed,
the car, but
indeed. Yeah. It is absolutely fantastic. And, it is such a thrill to be able to chat with someone who created such a wonderful car. And people often wonder, what makes a collector car, what makes a classic car, what makes it an important car? And I always say it's cars that connect with us emotionally. It's cars that mean something to their manufacturers, say something about the time in which they were created and about the people who created them. And I think that without stretching over into hyperbole, the Sera is certainly a masterpiece that you have created, and kudos to Toyota for building it exactly as you imagined it. And I and everyone who sees the car could not be more pleased that that was the case. So thank you very much, Stuart Reed.
My pleasure. And I have to add, that you have to really congratulate the team in Japan that carried it forward to production. They did a spectacular job, So
yes, we have to also applaud and be extremely grateful when the productionizing team does not get in the way of the brilliant concept. So yes, kudos to them indeed.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Stuart. So glad you
You're
could join
welcome.
us. Look forward to seeing you
Good.
here in Newport again.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Donald.
Bye-bye.